really some contentious areas, probably most of all in North Belfast, where the problem it seems to be less about a fear of paramilitary kind of violence than it is about antisocial youth behaviour.
It's also important to emphasise that those polled in this survey were actually interface residents, just to inform the wider community. How often is this sort of research carried out? How significant is this actual poll?
I think this, well, from my understanding and talking to academics and pollsters, I don't think a survey like this, so specific to the walls and living at interfaces, has ever been carried out before. And in a way, that's too bad, because it would be great to see what those results were against, say, a similar poll taken 10 years ago. But I don't believe or understand that it actually exists.
Our image in recent times has been completely turned on its head. I'm sort of thinking along the lines of the side of Paisley and McGuinness, operating in a functioning executive, sworn enemies now working side by side. What do the peace walls do to that image?
If people think there's a need for peace walls, it suggests some kind of uncertainty. Just to give you an anecdote, that's sort of an example, in 1998, when I worked for Senator Kennedy, we went to Belfast and Derry, London, Derry, whatever your politics I'll go with. And there was a Massachusetts company there, and I called them and said, would you like, Senator Kennedy to have a photo with your CEO? And because usually people love those kind of photographs with their politicians. And I was told, oh, no, please don't even tell anybody that our operation, our call center, is in Northern Ireland, because there's an impression about Northern Ireland being unstable and unsafe, and people will think our service isn't reliable. So as long as you have those ongoing concerns, I think it's a problem for businesses who might want to invest, especially in the neighborhoods that could really use the investment.
You've done great work yourself in kickstarting the debate here, but what now needs to happen on the ground?
I think what we did was kickstart the debate. I think it takes a lot of community work. I think our poll showed that people really support that. There's a lot of great community leaders in Northern Ireland. I've met lots of them who are working on both sides of the divide. I think it takes them building up their resources. And it takes a little bit of time. People have to have confidence that things have truly changed. But it involves, involving the PSNI, a greater feeling about their being protected by the PSNI. It takes economic development, housing, all kinds of things that get people to a place in their head where they feel that it's safe to bring down peace lines.
I don't know if you recall the collapse of the Berlin Wall. They had David Hasselhoff singing "I've Been Looking for Freedom" at their event. If not the Hoff, who can you get us?
It's actually interesting. You should pull this up and maybe play it on your program. Maura O'Connell, who is born in County Clare, lives in Nashville, Grammy Award-nominated singer, actually has a song called Walls. And it's very, seriously, now, it wouldn't quite be the same as the Hoff, I'll grant you, but it's actually a very interesting song about, it's worth getting, because it's an interesting song. It's very evocative of what we're talking about here with the walls.
For any barrier to be removed, there needs to be the necessary trust between those living on either side of it. To gauge the current nature of that setup, I've turned to a group immersed in improving the relations between the two traditions, the Community Relations Council. So Duncan, what genius failed to ask the residents living on the interfaces for their views on the walls?
Well, I think it's just been one of those things. These things were put up and then nobody asked any more questions, and that's one of the big problems, is that we have a plan for putting these things up. They go up and then people just walk away, but the problem is the problems don't go away, as we know. And so while there's lots of plans all over Belfast even to put up new ones, we still don't have any strategies to take them down.
Strange, isn't it, that we're relying on an outsider to tell us what to do again?
I think sometimes it's only an outsider that sees that it's abnormal. I think we've got so used to this being normal that the point that this came from America is in a way not surprising. I would say we would probably have sat with this for a long time if somebody didn't ask the question. I mean, one of the things that comes out of that survey is that people are realistic. They know these things can't come down tomorrow, but they also know that unless somebody puts in a bit of effort, it'll still be the question in 10 years' time, when can we get them down? And it'll still be only when we make the effort. So I think the key bit that comes out of this is we need somebody to ask the questions, and we need somebody to develop some strategies, and we need some people to do some actions now.
And whose voice is it that really counts in this argument?
Well, in the end of the day, people have to be safe, so we have to look at the local people.
The residents you're talking about?
Absolutely. For local people, I mean, the end of the test is, does it work? But the problem is, if you ask somebody who's having stones put through their windows whether they want the wall down or not, they're going to say no until somebody's dealt with the issue of the stones coming over. So somebody's got to start dealing with those kind of questions and start providing alternatives that people can say, I can live with that.
We've had decommissioning, we've had demilitarisation and power sharing, all things at one stage people argued could never happen. Is it so outrageous to suggest that the walls should start coming down soon?
No, I don't think so. I think, in fact, it's necessary. And there are places where you could see where they could already begin. I mean, there are some which went up which are no longer required. They went up so long ago and people have stopped noticing them. There are other ones where you could test it. I mean, there are gates which are open now only during the day. You could keep the gates open a bit longer and see where that was going. There are some, like in Alexandra Park, there's a fence through the middle of a park. Somebody needs to look at whether there aren't different ways to do security in a park except putting a fence there. I mean, those are just a few examples. There are also the new one up there at Hazelwood, which has gone up. And there's a lot of people there who don't want that up. So the key thing is that for the first time it's being kept under review. Every year there's a report. Somebody's got to look at actually pulling it down. So hopefully it's not outrageous and it becomes realistic. Well, it's a bit like peace. People say it's in the long term. Actually, they're putting it on the long finger. And we think that the key thing is that it's practical things. People have to believe, first of all, their politicians are very clear that they want it down. They're working together to build the relations. Second of all, that the crime issues and the antisocial behaviour issues are going to be dealt with in a different way. Thirdly, that permission to have riots on an exterior basis. Yeah, and by permission I mean somebody around that says okay to throw rocks at them crowd. That starts to disappear and those messages start to disappear. Nowadays, the reality is, on the street for kids, it's still true, them and us.
That's the antisocial element that's been
introduced. That's very deep. And kids pick that up and kids then think it's okay, come and fire rocks at people just because they're prods, just because they're Fenians, whatever the right language is there. We have now to change the message to kids that it's not cool anymore to do this, and then you have to do the tackling of the stuff, because this is normal antisocial behaviour. Kids firing rocks at people. We've got to change the fact that this is a legitimate target. It's not anymore, and that's a big political and long-term social issue.
But shouldn't people start catching themselves on, if you've accepted that this is an antisocial behaviour problem, this is a wholly disproportionate response to antisocial behaviour?
Oh, totally disproportionate. And if it is antisocial behaviour, it's a policing response you need. And so that's policing by the police. Clearly you need a strategy there, but there's evidence in that survey which says that people don't necessarily trust that the police will be able to do it yet. So the police need the community support in this, and so community policing is the answer in the long run to antisocial behaviour, both by the police and by the community. And so the key thing that comes out of this survey is, for as long as these walls are there, people don't do that hard work, and we've got to turn that around. We've got to start doing the hard work so we don't need the walls.
One of your group's stated aims is to promote the recognition of cultural diversity. How can there be this acceptance and respect of cultural diversity if the communities can't even coexist? Why would you need it if you live in an area devoid of diversity?
Well, absolutely. Cultural diversity in these areas means at the moment just that we live completely separately, but that won't work for most towns and cities. That won't work for the city centre of Belfast. If you're talking about bringing tourists into here, people from different cultures have to feel safe. So you're dead right. There's a big question of whether we mean it about cultural diversity until we've got these walls down. The big question is, when do you move from managing the issue to actually changing the issue? And I think it wasn't until we finally had the peace process and the political process in place that became the big question. So if you want to measure progress, the measure of progress is you're asking me that question and it's a realistic question for the first time. I think 10 years ago somebody asked that question, they said it's not a realistic question to get them down. Now it's a necessary question. In fact, it's a bit of a question, why are they not down? And that's progress.
Others following a similar path in promoting good relations are Belfast City Council, who state it is at the heart of their policy-making process and is one of their top priorities. So much so that they've produced this, a 28-page good relations plan. And with over 40 interfaces throughout Belfast, you'd think they'd feature prominently in the Council's plans. Oh dear. They fall under the Council's transforming contested space category. We could play a major role in bringing together other agencies and projects, blah, blah, blah. This might focus on preventing and managing disorder, blah, 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 blah. We could, this might, hardly proactive. But there's more. When it comes to interfaces, they want to work in partnership to improve the quality of life in some of the most deprived areas of the city. Full marks for stating the obvious. Time to talk to someone prepared to show some leadership.